Welcome back to The Explainer. Today we're diving into a genuinely wild story where international trade law, massive amounts of garbage, and cutting-edge AI are all colliding in real time. We're going to unpack how a seemingly mundane waste disposal route has suddenly found itself right at the center of a complex geopolitical standoff.
Let's start with a massive number to get things rolling. 3.46 million. That is the amount of municipal solid waste, tons of it, that Ontario ships right across the border into U.S. disposal sites, specifically Michigan landfills, every single year. I mean, just picture that volume. That is a staggering amount of physical material moving across an international boundary year in and year out.
Section 1. The Geopolitics of Garbage, a vulnerable transboundary corridor.
Now, Ontario's garbage actually accounts for 14.35% of all waste disposed of in Michigan. That's a huge slice of the pie. And because Ontario's disposal strategy leans so heavily on an open border, this massive transboundary corridor is incredibly vulnerable to current year-to-date headline news and sudden trade disruptions between Washington and Ottawa.
Section 2. Trade wars and tariffs, the escalating bilateral friction. So over the past few months, we've been watching this intense tit-for-tat escalation actively threatening to shut down this critical waste corridor. In early 2025, you have President Trump imposing 25% tariffs on Canada under the emergency powers of the IEEPA framework. Basically overnight, Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer pushes to aggressively hike state landfill fees to deter that Canadian trash. Then up north, Ontario Premier Doug Ford fires back with a retaliatory 25% surcharge on U.S. electricity exports. And all this political maneuvering, it's basically leading us right up to the looming July 2026 USMCA or CUSMA sunset review, where the entire free trade agreement could face expiration.
To put Governor Whitmer's proposal in perspective, Michigan's legacy fee was just 36 cents per ton. That practically made the state a magnet for out-of-state trash. The new proposed fee? $5 a ton. That is a massive hike. The goal there is to generate $80 million in state revenue for environmental remediation and, for sure, to seriously curb that reliance on imported Ontario waste. Meanwhile, back in Ontario, they're facing a domestic capacity collapse. Experts are saying the province could run out of landfill space in under 9 years. To handle this, the Ford government introduced Bill 5, which fast-tracks domestic sites like the proposed Dresden landfill by bypassing standard environmental assessments. But as you might expect, this sparked fierce, mobilized pushback from local municipalities and the chiefs of Ontario, who view it as a clear violation of treaty rights and land protection.
So with trade wars, tariffs, and domestic regulatory chaos, it really makes you wonder, if you're an operator right now, how does a simple bin of wood survive a closed border? How do you even move materials when the rules of international trade are literally changing by the hour?
Section 3. The 905 Wood Digital Refinery. Explainable compliance. Well, to answer that, let's look at 905 Wood. They aren't your typical waste hauler at all. They operate as an advanced digital refinery built to completely outsmart these trade barriers. They call themselves a sentient bridge. Basically, they take messy, unsorted, chaotic physical construction waste and use rigorous AI to filter it down to meet the ultra-strict, high-purity requirements of the biocarbon market. They're turning a political liability into a verified, high-value asset.
Section 4. Pixel 10 Pro AI Stack, edge computing at the bin.
The hyper-local edge computing they use to do this is honestly straight out of sci-fi. Right there at the physical dumpster, the operation runs on a Google Pixel 10 Pro with Android 16. It leverages Google's Light RT AI stack to run a Gemma 4e2 model. So they've essentially squeezed a multi-billion parameter AI directly onto a mobile device, allowing it to visually categorize whether wood is clean or contaminated in under 500 milliseconds. It is incredibly fast.
Now, obviously, you need strict guardrails with AI. If the model's confidence ever drops below an 85% threshold, what they call the amber band, secondary systems immediately kick in. It triggers an E4B dual model consensus guard for a secondary visual check to prevent errors. And if there's still any ambiguity, the system defaults to the precautionary principle and auto-rejects the load, every single time.
Section 5. Digitized cross-border compliance, beating the audit roulette. So you've got perfect sorting at the bin, but how does that highly accurate data actually solve a border crisis? Well, the old legacy system relies on deteriorating paper records and subjective visual customs checks, which carries a massive risk for audit failure during a tariff war. 905 Wood's digital refinery application completely replaces that with immutable digital audit logs powered by enterprise-grade AlloyDB architecture and Vertex AI pipelines to parse those complex environmental regs instantly.
Let's walk through their application workflow, because it actually mirrors strict U.S. Customs and Border Protection protocols before a truck even gets loaded. Step 1 is ingestion and regulatory mapping to make sure there's zero prohibited material. Step 2 integrates X-ray and radiation sensor validation. Step 3 provides real-time multimodal logistics reconciliation. And finally, Step 4 outputs automated, verifiable PDF documentation.
The whole point of this UI/UX workflow output is to directly satisfy those volatile USMCA mandates. The app dynamically generates an API-linked PDF certificate of origin. It proves labor value content by certifying union wage structures, lists specific site addresses to hit point-of-entry rules, and provides automated regulatory origin verification. This is exactly how you secure duty-free status when politicians are actively trying to shut trade down. Section 6. The Circular Bioeconomy. From cost center to environmental asset.
Zooming back out to the macro level, you can really see how this secures Ontario's industrial leadership in the global circular bioeconomy. Right now, the waste industry in Ontario is hit with a heavy $60 per ton CERSL levy. But by using decoupled billing on their transparent request for quote platform, literally separating the cost of logistics from disposal, 905 Wood transparently and structurally bypasses that levy.
And it actually gets better. By diverting this hyper-pure AI-sorted wood away from landfills altogether, this system mints carbon dividends, or corks. Because they have the hard data to prove their environmental impact, they're generating carbon offsets currently valued at around $350 per ton. There's a quote from the founder in the 905 Wood deep dive that just perfectly nails their strategy. They said, "I don't write code, I sell circular levy avoidance, regulatory compliance, and carbon-verified feedstock." They are literally using Edge AI not just to sort trash, but as a highly protective business moat in a heavily taxed, politically chaotic industry.
Which leaves us with a pretty provocative question to chew on today. Are AI-driven digital refineries like this the only viable way for supply chains to survive this new era of global environmental protectionism? As tariffs rise and borders tighten up, tech might literally be our only bridge. Thanks so much for tuning into this explainer. Keep exploring how AI is reshaping international trade, and we'll see you next time.